The big clash of round 5 in the Biel Grandmaster tournament was Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Anish Giri. MVL leading the tournament with 2.5 out of 4. Giri just behind, having just won his last 2 games. We join the game after 30 moves. It was a Berlin defence to the Spanish. I know, a favourite opening of many of you. And we have, well, a very close battle here on our hands. MVL played a new idea, and it's given him the advantage of the 2 bishops. But it's a very closed position, and I think you can see that at the moment these bishops really don't achieve very much. The bishop on f3 is blocked in here by the pawn, and certainly the king side is closed, there's nothing happening there. And this bishop is also a bit blocked in. So the bishop pair, although it's kind of a theoretical advantage, actually doesn't have much effect in this position. Very often in closed positions, a knight can be a very powerful piece. But actually here, well, it's just on the wrong square. You can see that all these squares that the knight would like to move into are controlled. If we could put the knight just 1 square forward on d5, now that would be a different story because the knight would be able to hop in here. But on d6, yeah, not so great. So both sides have their problems here, in a sense. But let's see how MVL handled the game. He played here Queen A1. This is a brilliant move, and after the game, MVL was, well, he was obviously very pleased with this maneuver. First thing is, it stops the queen, black's queen, coming down here. But it also prepares this move b4. As we'll see, that's a strong move. If black tries to prevent b4, then it comes anyway, actually. And then white will push through the a pawn and weaken this pawn here. And you can see the bishops in this position are starting to work very hard. So this is white's task. He's going to try and open up the position, and he needs to do that with pawn breaks. Now, Giri just waited. He clearly felt that he could withstand this assault. At the moment, b5 is covered. You can see these pawns and the knight prevent it. But this next maneuver, again, was very clever. Bishop e1, great move. Let's see what happens if black just sits there. Say he plays h5. Bishop f2. So now we can see the queen and the bishop attacking the d pawn. And if black defends, then here's the clever move. You can see that the bishop on b6 is unprotected, and therefore c4 is an excellent move. This can't be taken en passant because the bishop is en prise. And now, well, this is a horrible position. For example, if c5, queen a3, white is going to open up the queen side and those bishops are working very hard. Or if the knight comes back here, c5, and you take here and wins pawn. So Giri had to react. He played knight c8 to protect the bishop, and now the pawn is en prise, and queen d7. So c4 is no longer possible, or not very good anyway. Right, what happens next? Well, h3. MVL is hinting at opening up the king side for his bishops. Okay, this was locked down with h5. b5. Right, so the knight has been forced away, and now b5 is possible. So it's all about opening up the position for the bishops. This was taken, and Giri took again, and queen a8. And now it's not possible to protect the pawn on b7 with knight d6, because suddenly there is a massive attack on the king, and this pawn could drop. horrible position for black. You can see how as soon as this bishop enters the game, it's incredibly dangerous for black. So going back here, Giri just gave the pawn on b7. And now there's a bit of shuffling for a few moves. Another check. Queen came back. White doesn't need to hurry here because black has no active plan at all. So they've reached the time control and MVL is just maneuvering to think, okay, what can I do next? By the way, you can see that black's big problem here is that his pieces need protection the whole time. If he could support the knight or bishop with a pawn, that would relieve the queen from its duties, but he can't, and so black is completely passive here. Okay, well, what's the next step? Well, MVL continues with this strategy of opening the position, g4, so he needs pawn breaks. So we've had b5, and now he switches across the other side of the board with g4. This is great stuff. Okay, pawn exchange is necessary. Black could wait here, but you can see the bishop would come to h4. This pawn on f5 is vulnerable. It doesn't really help black's defense. Giri exchanged on g4. So you can see, well, not only has the position open for this bishop, it might like to cut back to this diagonal and hit the pawn here, but also the bishop on f2 will come into the game. So black can only wait. He just has to protect his pieces. And now MVL switches across to the king side. If the queen can join up, link with the bishops, then black's king, well, you can see it's actually very exposed because these pieces are miles away on the other side of the board. So, okay, first of all, the bishop comes round to best diagonal, and now the queen shuffles over, and there's not a lot that black can do here. Queen enters the position, and queen e5 check. Now here Giri exchanged. If he just moves the king, then the queen will come in, and there's no decent defense. So watch what happens. First bishop h4, threatening here. The knight comes back. Bishop d5 threatens mate here, and well, it's all over. Black has no decent defense here. So after queen e5 check, Giri decided to exchange queens, but of course now white has a fantastic asset. Not only the two bishops, but this pawn. It's very dangerous, and of course it won't take too much effort for white's king to step up the board and start to attack these vulnerable pawns. And well, you can see that without a light squared bishop, it's very difficult to defend against this. I think objectively black should be lost here, but well, Giri completely crumbled actually from this moment. Perhaps he could have put up a better defense, but you know, they'd already played. I think this is move 55. They're already going to the 5th, 6th hour of play, and yeah, it's impossible to defend against bishops like this. I'm not quite sure why he gave up the pawn, but probably it makes no difference at this point anyway. And now the pawn is going through. Well, let me just go back. If the knight comes back to defend, then e7. You can see that the king can't help in the defense against the pawn because it can't step here, it can't play here because there's a discovered check, and well, it's very simple. You just play bishop here and you're going to win the knight anyway. So Giri thought he'd try to get a pawn for it at least, but it didn't help the situation. In fact, here he resigned. This is so easy for white to win. King just marches in, and you can take these pawns off. It's all over. Well, I thought it was a superb positional performance from Biel. The way he switched sides with these pawn breaks, first b5 and then g4, I think it's really instructive. A real lesson on how to work with the bishop pair and how to get those pieces working. So after 5 rounds, halfway in the tournament, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave leads by a clear point with 3.5 out of 5. Still a long way to go though.